welcome back, and hopefully in 4K this time. Did some upgrades in between the first fight and the second fight of this tier. We cleared this first week, so strats will be definitely different as things are evolving. I see a lot of changes in Party Finder. Standard pull, tomahawk him, pull him a little bit south. That way, whenever he resets, he's not going to move around too much. The first big hit right here, these big AoEs, it's a good idea to set up a rotation here where you know there's going to be a reprisal on one of those and one of the heavier group mitigations. Save the other one for the stacks during the fight because those stacks hit hard as well. First tank buster, I highly recommend just invulning it no matter what your invuln is. It's probably better uptime because there's only going to be one person that's going to take the dot, and then everyone else can just focus on doing damage at the time. You won't be able to do that for the rest of the fight, so if you choose to invuln those single target ones or you choose to stack on them, both of them work pretty well. Your mitigations will be fine. As soon as you see that cast bar go off, that's whenever you should position yourself as the tank for the spots. The other players can position earlier. I really recommend that because this is one where people sometimes show up kind of late. So we are now moving into the limit cut, as people are calling it there. We did the diamond weapon style strategy where 1, 2, 3, 4 are the markers and then you replace them as they go on. I've also done the north-south even odds kind of one. They're both kind of the same for a tank. Nascent flash is a good thing to drop here, especially if you're the off tank here. You can get that main tank back up a good amount of life and take a little bit of pressure off of the healers because these auto attacks really hit hard, as you're probably going to see later on in this video. So a lot more downtime here. This boss is a lot of downtime. I think they do that on purpose because there's so many movement mechanics. Learn to identify your icons here really quickly, especially as you're getting into this and working through prog. I like to start on the inner cardinal of the boss's kind of inner 4 squares that are right there. So I'd be starting around the 1 or a little bit closer in, and then run out if I immediately identify I need to get out. I'm basically looking for the tether and trying to figure out what needs to happen then. Otherwise, it's fairly automatic. That was the second tank buster there. That's a split tank buster. Evoke during the cast bar and mitigate heavier if you're going to be the one picking up aggro from the boss, because you're going to have that dot effect as well as having to take these auto attacks and that big hit. Main tank, if you heal yourself back up after it's done, you're pretty much in good shape. This transmission strategy, not my favorite. I prefer the one where people kind of cluster in the southeast. I think that's Hector. I can't remember what this one's particularly called. But really, we're just going around the boss and then going to turn our baits away. It worked, definitely. A couple people did get damage downs in this, but I don't know if any movement mechanics would have changed then. One thing to note is don't take your tank stance off during this fight. Even if you're the off tank, it's important for you to be number 2 on the aggro meter if you're not actively tanking for the split tank busters. So for this mechanic right here, bait the puddles on the middles where people are going. I angle my camera towards the safe spot where we're going to run always, and it just means as soon as I see that animation finished, I can just bolt out there and get there first. Yeah, now it's time for the second stack spread. Looking at this, I should be in the northwest quadrant. This is, again, another thing you can pre-position a lot for, and I was slow on pre-positioning. But thankfully, I just had the stack at this time. I can get back with my particular stack here. Once again, we have another tank buster. Nothing fancy here. If the other tank is going to be, again, they're rotating off, watch their HP pretty well. As a warrior, you're typically going to say bloodletting for yourself to keep yourself up going after that. But if your off tank is going to need a little bit of help, Nascent's there and try to use it. But you'll note I don't really use it that much in this fight. I'm really focused more on my own DPS, my own rotation, so I'm kind of going automatic. So we are moving into yet another one of these mechanics where there's very few safe spots and there's particular positions where you want to go. Our group was doing the one where we both bait in the same square. I've seen other groups that do both safe spots. So at the camera here, you can see there is another whole quadrant that we didn't even do. That there is why I recommend watching those big party stacks, because that was an auto attack that got me there. I had taken 2 hits right before the big hit, take the big hit, and then immediate auto attack afterwards. Mitigation for single mitigation timing is very tight in this fight. You want to make sure you have those up for the tank busters, because the bleeds are no joke, the auto attacks are no joke. But if you have a little bit in the tank, that particular mechanic right there is one I see healers usually missing people on, because there's that quick reposition. They don't have enough time to potentially look at or pay attention to HP bars. So it is what it is. This is our Cachexia strat. It's Hector right off the bat. Very, very straightforward. This just kind of works pretty well in a party finder setting, whereas the conveyor belt style ones where people kind of roll through in sequence in the middle and distance themselves out a little bit differently can be a little bit tighter. This tended to work really well for us week 1, but I'm hoping there's going to be some optimization for this, because there's still so much movement. No need to worry about mitigating any of this. I mean, this is a fairly light hit. So here our main tank is taking the tank buster solo, doing the invuln strat. It's totally fine to do it here. I was really just waiting for him to decide what he was going to choose to do, and he chose to invuln. So I saved my mitigations off of there. It still is actually a pretty wise idea, even if you are taking the invuln, to mitigate a little bit, because it will help with those auto attacks afterwards. It will help with the bleed. It's just going to keep you up a little bit more and keep those healers focused on what they need to do. For this Dark Sphere mechanic, it is recommended that you talk through which squares you're going to adjust to if the X is in your square. So I would ordinarily be standing in that same inner cardinal spot inside the boss's hitbox next to 1, where I just gap close to, actually. But in this situation, the X was there, so I had to shift out. I see a lot of Party Finder groups still kind of moving around a little bit too much on that, trying to adjust. It is pretty straightforward if everybody just kind of offsets 1 in their row, but that might just be my own personal take on this. Nothing fancy here, another stack spread. Make sure you're getting your spots nice and quickly. This is a good clean one, I think. Yeah, that one looked nice. As the fight's winding down, you're not going to see too much. There's obviously the big Cachexia 2 mechanic coming up, but all of these later ones are mostly just identifying safe squares and doing a single mechanic. This here, my positioning is always to stand in this square right here. If the tether's shorter, I'll be standing right on the X, but it gives you the most freedom to adjust based on where the cleaves are going to be and find that safe square fast. I did not move there, though, because I'm an idiot. That's okay. We have plenty of DPS. We'll be fine in this fight. I already died once, and in fact, there was a period where I had to quickly build up enmity without using up my provoke, just in case the tank buster was going to hit before the provoke time was done. So you actually might have seen me earlier in the fight doing my ranged tomahawk throw. Again, the goal there is to make sure you're getting up to second place in aggro by whatever means possible. If you die as a tank, just a good idea to provoke immediately and take aggro. However, if you're in a party finder situation with an unfamiliar tank, you maybe don't feel familiar with that, it is possible in between tank busters to build up your enmity naturally with your tank stance and your ranged enmity attack in the early part of the fight. The later the fight goes on, the harder that gets. So just plan to provoke, and basically all tanks in this fight know that whoever's taking aggro really just is based around who probably has the most mitigations up at the time. There isn't a particular rotation or a set pattern that are going to be happening. We use the tank LB strat for this. So I'm standing way out in an unsafe square. That way I make sure I hit everybody with the big LB, and then I roll back. That's how we're all able to survive this nonsense that comes out. Not my favorite. This is really possible to solve really well, Cachexia 2. It's not too hard. It just is a matter of timing and spacing and finding the safe spot. So if your group can do it without the LB3, you're going to get a lot more safety. But as you can see in this fight, even with our deaths, even with our damage downs, a good amount of DPS is able to get this done. This mechanic here was just about finding the safe spot and baiting in the right location. That one actually, even if you don't quite figure out where the safe spot is, there's enough time that if you wait and see where those first movers are going, you can still catch up if you weren't paying attention. it's really about pre-positioning, standing in the middle where you need to be, and having that time to think. And then yeah, here is just the, we're coming to the end of the fight here. Nothing is going to be new here. And to be honest, all of these mechanics get really, really easy towards the end. I feel like after Cachexia 2, the boss just gives up. Time for the last tank buster, and then moving on to Enrage. Just go ahead and throw out every mitigation you've got for single mitigations for that tank buster. You're not going to need them for the rest of the fight, and the more that you can shave off the damage you're going to take, the more the healers can do their uptime to burn through stuff. So let's move on to the closing comments. Again, I recommend highly invulning that first tank buster just to keep things simple. It's so early in the fight, and doing a swap at that point or something crazy, just keep focused on it. Use those heavy group mitigations on the raid wides. Definitely the big raid wide hits. That's where I like to toss out Shake It Out. Make sure that we have a reprisal there, but also try to mitigate those stack hits. If you're talking with a rotation with the other tank, split them up pretty evenly. I think it works out timing wise. I've never been the person to mitigate the stack hits, but I think it's possible to get most of those, if not all of those. If taking that aggro during the tank buster, regardless on if you are doing a shared tank buster and swapping then, or you're doing the split tank buster where there's a mandatory swap, definitely use heavier mitigation if you're going to be taking aggro after that. The latter part really though is it's all about pre-positioning. This boss really sticks to the middle of the arena for the most part, and your focus is just kind of keep them there and pointed north, and the rest is going to reset itself. But pre-position a lot. This boss animation locks a ton, and you'd be surprised at how early you can stack and move in certain areas. All right, well, we'll see you in P7S. Thank you very much for watching, and again, I'll be listing everything in the description about strategies, about any other comments or thoughts that I have, and please let me know if there's something more I can help you with. Thank you very much.